Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about New Year's resolutions for the first 6 zodiac signs for Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. I will have part 2 up after this for the remaining 6 zodiac signs. This will be part 1, and yes, it pertains to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. So the first sign I'm going to talk about is Aries. Now, Aries is known to be perhaps somewhat quarrelsome and combative, and I think what Aries can do as far as a resolution for this year perhaps is they have to understand that there's ways to be, you could dispute issues without necessarily being disputatious. There are ways constructively disagreeing with somebody, and also the thing connected with patience with Aries, I should say impatience rather, is that Aries is very good at initiating and starting projects. They might start many projects simultaneously, but they don't always finish them due to the impatience. And it's important for Aries perhaps to just be able to learn the art more of persistence and be able to finish what they start. They may finish, I'm not saying Aries never finishes projects, they are single-minded. I'm sure they do finish a lot of projects, but they're more inclined to stop more before a project is completed because it's attributed to their impatience. So those are some things to look at for Aries for the coming year. Now, for Taurus, well, I think with Taurus, it's a number of things. Taurus has many good traits. They could be very persistent, persevering, very steadfast, and loyal. But with Taurus, I think the main thing for them is to maybe, if they're in a rut, to get out of it. Taurus sometimes has an aversion to expanding their horizons. I think sometimes Taurus gets complacent and set in their general life situation. And I may have to some degree, as many of you may know, I have Taurus rising, and I can really resonate with this, really relate to this. And the thing about it is sometimes getting out of that box for Taurus, and also to be able to not be confined to your own viewpoint, and be able to expand that way as well, and listen and be more philosophical and listen to another person's point of view as well. All right, well, for Gemini. Well, Gemini is known to be very restless, and similar to Aries, they sometimes may lack that persistence, but with Gemini, it's attributed more to restlessness as opposed to the Aries impatience. And I think with Gemini, the key is not to scatter their interests, and be able to follow up and show tenacity and persistence with things. And Gemini sometimes, Gemini will think so rapidly and so quickly. An unfortunate tendency, I think, for Geminis might be to maybe when someone's talking, to talk maybe simultaneously while that other person's talking, and they're trying to, their minds already might have been able to finish the sentence for somebody else, but it doesn't mean it always has to be done. Gemini can be very loquacious and talkative, and it's important to remember to make sure they're not being maybe a conversation dominator, and make sure you disperse the conversation evenly with other people. So I think those are some things to look at as far as maybe resolutions for Gemini for the coming year. Now for Cancer, well, Cancer is a very strong homebody and can be very introverted at heart. They're very enamored with their home and family life, and can be very loyal in terms of their family. But Cancer, I think, one of the things about Cancer is the strong introversion, and sometimes the shyness, and also a lot of times the oversensitivity to things. I have my Sun in Cancer, as many of you may know, and sometimes I may take things a little bit more to heart than I should, and I shouldn't necessarily do that. A lot of times that somebody, maybe they make a general statement, and I might think, oh, they're making a subtle reference toward me or something. And I think those are some things to look at for Cancer for the coming year, and maybe just not to take as many issues to heart as it may be interpreted or perceived, because Cancer can misconstrue things like that. And maybe many Cancers can be very introverted, as I stated before, and I think the thing for Cancer is to maybe try to be a little bit more gregarious. It's hard to be a Leo when you're a Cancer, but there's always room to be a little bit more, I guess you could say, the outgoing, is what I'm basically saying. Be a little bit more extroverted and gregarious, so to speak. Now, this any New Year's resolutions and aspirations for the sign Leo? Well, as many of you may know, Leo can be very dignified and have a lot of pride. Maybe it's about curtailing their pride to some degree. And a lot of times, Leo being a fixed sign, they're very resolute, and they may be confined often to what their opinion is and what they say, and that has to be right. Well, in many cases, a Leo may actually be right, but it doesn't always mean that the other person's wrong, because it's about other person's perspectives and vantage points. So those are some things I think to look at with Leo as far as the pride, and also be able to listen to maybe the other person's point of view maybe a little bit more than usual. And I think with those things that could be very important, because Leo is very magnanimous and generous. They have many good attributes and characteristics like the other signs, but I think it's the over excessive pride, and then the thing about trying to listen to the other person's point of view is another thing to look at as far as maybe trying to change a little bit for the coming new year. Now, last but not least in this part 1 segment, Virgo. Well, Virgo can be very analytical. They're very detail-oriented. They have a very discerning eye and can see a lot of things that other people will overlook. But it's not always about, you don't always have to point out maybe someone else's maybe a negative on someone, especially if they may already know about it. Virgo, in the worst, I guess you could say, the manifestation or expression, can be somewhat judgmental and critical. Though Virgo can be known to be tactful and diplomatic, sometimes their criticism might be taken the wrong way, especially if you say it to a water, like say somebody that has water prominent in their horoscope. And so those are some things to look at as far as Virgo for the coming year, and try to be maybe a little bit less critical and a little bit less judgmental, I think, are some things to look at as far as Virgo goes. And not everything has to be exact. Virgos can also be very about exactitude and precision, and not everything always has to be that way. It's okay to maybe have something where it's not always at that exact amount or exact level or what have you. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the Zodiac signs and New Year's resolutions for 2016. Part 1, and stay tuned next time where I'll be dissertating and talking about the New Year's resolutions for 2016 for Zodiac signs Part 2. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.